Hi, welcome back to the Return Homestead. Today we are making salsa. Actually, some people might call it picante. I'm going to blend it with a stick blender so it's smooth. Here we go. I will give you the recipe as it's written. I'm actually making 6 batches. So the first thing you want to do is take your tomatoes. If you don't core and score them like I do, that is cut the core out, put an X on the bottom and stick them in the freezer until you can get around to it or until your peppers are ready. Then you're going to have to scald them for 2 to 3 minutes and then put them in ice water so that the skins slip off. If you use the freezer like I'm doing, then as soon as they thaw out, the skins slip either way. So I've started with, the recipe actually calls for 6 pounds of tomatoes. So I have 36 pounds of tomatoes. You're going to use 6. We'll also put the recipe in the description so you can get a recipe there. So I have them split between 2 pans because they won't all fit in one. They may, but I split it between the 2 of them. Then you're going to, it says 3 jalapeno peppers. So I'm doing that by 6, and I've got all of those chopped here and ready to go. And I'm going to divide it between the 2 pans. And I already had some jalapenos frozen, so I'm going to add it in as well. If you watch this channel on a regular basis, you know that I am a recipe rebel. And so if it calls for 6, I'm going to put 12. Then it calls for 9 hot dried chili peppers. I have chilies that I've saved from last year. This is Fresno's, they're jalapenos. I believe there are some habaneros in there. So I'm also going to add those to the mix. We like it spicy. Now if the hot peppers bother you, you might want to wear gloves. They don't bother me as long as I don't touch my face. I'm using the back of my hand. Then I'm going to add, it's not in the recipe, some sweet peppers. So I have bell peppers here, and I'll split that between the 2. Then the recipe calls for 15 garlic. Now it says minced, but I'm going to hit this with a stick blender. So I'm putting them in whole, and I'll split them between the 2 pans. The next thing in the recipe is 3 cups of onions. I've already got them chopped up. This isn't all. I've got another bowl, and I'll also split these. Then the recipe calls for, while your salsa is cooking, you need to get your jars sterilized if they're not already, and your lids. Mine are already sterilized in the pan behind me. And you want to get your canner going on the stove, bringing it up to a boil. So that once you take the boiling liquid from the salsa and you put it into the canner, they'll be about the same temperature and you won't risk breaking your jars. Making salsa to me is more about your preference, the taste. So you want to taste your salsa to make sure it's not too spicy or not spicy enough. Maybe it needs a little salt. As long as you keep the lemon juice in there, you should be very good. Also, to each jar that I do, since I added sweet peppers to it, I'm going to add a tablespoon of lime juice. And the reason why I'm doing this is, number 1, I like the taste of lime, and number 2, to make sure I have enough acidity in the salsa mix so that it doesn't spoil on me. But you want to give it a taste test. That's just about right. So it could use a little extra salt. I'm not going to add it to it, mainly because usually put it on things like chips that already have salt, or you've got people coming over that can't have a lot of salt. So I'm not going to add the extra salt, but it's really good. And this house is starting to smell like a Mexican restaurant. Now that this is on the stove boiling, I want to carefully use my stick blender to smooth it out. So it'll be more of a picante style sauce. When you use a stick blender, make sure you burp it or that's going to splash up on you. I want to be sure that my garlic it's not still in cloves. That wouldn't taste very good to get a whole mouthful of garlic. And it looks like it's done pretty good. So it says to cook this for 10 minutes or cook it as long as you need to get the thickness that you want. Because what you're really doing is taking the water out and making it a little bit thicker. Some people add flour to thicken it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be patient and let it cook down a little bit. I'll do the same to the other pan that's on the back. Now that my sauce is ready and I've got it to the consistency that I want it, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of lime juice per jar. This is totally optional. I do it as an extra precaution and because I like the flavor. And you're going to start ladling the sauce into the jars. You want to leave 1/2 inch headspace. I'm just eyeballing that. Once you get all your jars full, you're going to clean the rims off with a paper towel dampened with vinegar. And then you're going to put a lid on them and finger tight the rings and put it into your canner that has already been heating. Now that all my jars are in, I'm going to cover the canner. And it needs to come up to a full rolling boil for 15 minutes. For me, because of my altitude, I've got to add an additional 5 minutes. Well, thank you for coming along with me today as we canned salsa, or some call it picante sauce, basically because it's smooth and blended. I ended up with 32 pints plus almost a quart, which this is dinner, from doing 6 batches. Stop me for a minute. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen today as I canned salsa, or some call it picante sauce. Ended up with 32 pints plus almost a quart. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Until we see you next time, bye-bye.